Our guest today is a Navy veteran who served 20 years in the Navy and later turned into a Salesforce solution architect who is currently working with Salesforce. He's a 14x certified, he has 14x certifications, has got 14 certification, has more than 1300 badges on the Trailhead, and is actively contributing to help veterans start their career in Salesforce. He's an inspiration to a lot of veterans out there for his amazing success in the Salesforce ecosystem in such a short time. With that being said, David, thank you so much for being a guest on the Shrey Sharma Show.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me. It's great to be here, Shrey. I appreciate it.
Great. So, first of all, I am really, really very curious to know about a little bit about your background, like how you got into Navy. What did you always wanted to be into Navy or military, or did you always wanted to serve, or that just happened like anything? Or I mean, what's the story behind that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I wanted to be in the Navy since I was 5 years old. I'm
Okay.
fourth generation Navy, so all the way through my great grandfather, we all served in the Navy, and so it's kind of I jokingly call it the family business. But that was always the plan. It was to start with there, and initially I wanted to go into special operations, but ended up in aviation.
Got it. And so you used to fly the jets.
I was the navigator, and weapons systems officer. So I would sit beside the pilot, sometimes behind in my jet, and basically work everything except for the flight controls. And so we'd be, utilizing the weapon systems, talking on the radios, navigating, and getting the jet from point A to point B, helping with the pilot's focus and talking him through complicated situations, him or her, during landings or during flight. So essentially a backup as well.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So like, I mean, what got you into Salesforce, by the way? I mean, how did you got to know about all of this?
So it was really it was an accident, to be honest. Like you mentioned, I served for 20 years, and about the 15-year mark, I knew that I was going to get out of the Navy in 5 years. And at the time, I was a single parent of two small children, and so I needed to basically leave the military and go right into a decent paying career, so that I could provide for my children. And so at that 5 year prior to retirement mark, that's when I began looking. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to be a project manager,
Mm-hmm.
which is a great role. So I went to back to school, and I got actually two master's degrees, one in business administration, and then I got one from the military in strategic studies. And then I actually got several certifications for project management. So the project management
PMP,
professional, yep, PMP. I got my Lean
Six
Six Sigma
Sigma.
black belt, and then certified Scrum Master. And so that took me several years. And so at about the year prior mark to retiring, I started to have conversations with recruiters. And they were asking me, well, okay, Dave, I see you have your PMP and all these certs, and you've got two master's degrees. That's fantastic. What industry do you want to go into? And
Mm-hmm.
and I really had no answer for them, because, like I said, I was fourth generation Navy. I lived in Navy communities, on Navy bases, my whole life, and I had no concept of what civilian employment looked like. And so, after having several of these conversations and not being able to answer a basic question about what industry I was interested in, or even what company I wanted to work for, I was forced to kind of reassess my plan, and I started from scratch. And really, I leveraged LinkedIn to join a couple LinkedIn groups, and to contact other veterans and service members to figure out what they were doing. And in doing so, one of my connections put me in touch, or made me aware of Salesforce. And he said, you should really check this out. It's they're very supportive of the veteran community. And I was like, yeah, that's great, but I'm not really interested in sales. And so,
That's a
you
typical
know,
mindset of everyone who hears about Salesforce for the first
yeah.
time.
Yep, and he's like, yeah, no, I think they do sales, but they also do other things. So you should still check them out. And so I did. I'm always up for free training programs, and I had already taken advantage of several free training programs that are available to veterans prior to that. And so I looked at Trailhead, and created a free account, signed up for Trailhead Military, and started digging in. And the the more badges that I earned, the more I realized that this really hit on all the passions, all the things that I love to do, which, for me, I'm a process oriented person. So I love to create processes, fix processes, improve them. I love to dig in and solve problems, and I love to really reconfigure information and show it in dynamic ways to people. Analytics and configuring the user interface, that was really right up my alley. I didn't know it prior to that, but Trailhead really sealed the deal for me, and that's when I was, basically all in, and I put all my free time and attention from that point on to the next 12 months into nothing but Salesforce. After obviously, my normal work hours with the Navy, because I was still working for the Navy.
So this was 5 years before you got out of the Navy, or this was like the last year of when you wanted to get out of the Navy?
Yeah, this was the last year.
Probably the
'Cause
crucial time, yeah.
I had to go back to the drawing board, and the project management certifications and the degrees didn't hurt me, certainly, but I don't know they really helped me get a job in the Salesforce ecosystem. It was, it was the things that I did in that year that enabled me to make that transition to Salesforce and be successful.
Got it. And what was your first interaction with technology? Like, were you very much into technology before than that? Before Salesforce as well? Like when you were in Navy, or like when you started doing Salesforce, that was your first interaction with the technology world or the IT world?
So yeah, so I mean, like, technology wise, obviously being in aviation, we have frequent access to hardware, military hardware, and so I had spent a significant amount of my career surrounded by various types of military hardware. And as far as software in IT went, I had basic skill sets in Microsoft Word and Microsoft PowerPoint. I could check email on the internet, all that kind of stuff that you would normally associate with with modern life. But I really had no deep background in any one specific technology.
Like creating a process out of any tool which is available out there as a software. Did you ever?
Right. None of that.
None of that? Great.
No, none of that. I used some apps on my phone, and that was really about it.
Okay. And wasn't that even intimidating for you, like going into the Salesforce ecosystem for the first time?
It was. And if it wasn't for Trailhead, I honestly probably would have given up, because not only is the trend, I guess the transition process is very stressful, but you don't have to necessarily put that into a military context. I mean, think about anybody transitioning from one thing they've done their entire life into something else. It's stressful. You don't know if you're going to fail or not. You don't know if you're going to be successful. But you can't use half measures. You can't just kind of, dip your toe in the water, so to speak, and see what it's like. You have to, in my opinion, you have to fully jump in. And so when I did that, when I jumped in and I told myself that failure was not an option and I was going to succeed regardless of how long it took and how much effort I had to put into it, that's when it started to pay dividends. And I've seen folks throughout my career who have kind of casually investigated it, and they didn't achieve nearly as much success because they weren't fully committed to that course of action. And you have to be, if you want to be successful, you got to be all in.
Got it. And you just mentioned that you were a single father while you were in the Navy. Tell me a little bit about that experience. I'm really curious to know that.
Yeah, so I have a blended family. I've got 4 boys. Two of my children are from my previous wife's previous marriage, and they're all grown now. One's actually owns his own business, and one's an Army Ranger with distinguished service in Afghanistan, and he's doing well. And then my biological children, who I had at the time and was raising by myself, are currently teenagers. One's a senior in high school, one's a sophomore in college. But at the time, they were young. They were right around 10 years old. My youngest was slightly younger than that, and I had gotten a divorce and I had gotten full custody of my children. And so when that happens in the military, you have one of really 3 options. You either find childcare, you get out of the military, or you transition to a job where you don't have to deploy. And so I had tried to find some support to watch them, because I was deploying frequently. I mean, this is when a lot of world events were kicking off at that point, 2010 timeframe, and it was busy for us. But I couldn't find anyone that was able to provide full-time care for my children, and so I was forced to consider the other options. And luckily, because I had done well in the service, my commanding officer found a position for me that was non-deployable at the Naval War College, which is a military educational institution in Newport, Rhode Island. Initially as a student, which is where I got my first master's degree. And then I became a staff member, so I became a military professor. And so I was actually able to remain at that job for 7 years and finish out my Navy career, which I'm very thankful for, because they could have just said, hey, sorry, Dave, you can't deploy, we can't use you. It's been a nice 15 years, and they would have separated me, but they didn't do that. They took care of me, so that's good.
That's really great of them and you as well. You've seen a lot of ups and downs in your life, actually. As I can figure out. Okay, I have one question for you. That is, how your experience in military or Navy helped you shape your career that you have today?
So, we talked about just a minute ago how the exposure that I had to technology really didn't prepare me to software for the IT industry, and it really didn't. So I guess from a hard skill perspective, the Navy didn't really prepare me for the job that I'm in now. However, on the soft skill front, it absolutely did, and that's what a lot of veterans bring. I mean, some do bring, some do bring hard skills as well. In my case, I didn't, but all veterans and spouses bring a diverse set of soft skills. Skills like leadership, flexibility, adaptability, and so in my case, it was really the Navy taught me how to problem solve, and as as Salesforce professionals, that's one of the things that we have to do. Independent of the technical skills that go with this job, I have to be able to problem solve. And the Navy taught me that, when you have a goal or objective, you need to assess the situation, you need to analyze the risk factors, and you've got to create a plan to accomplish the goal or objective, and then execute that plan. And so even though it's a very broad problem solving framework to apply to a very specific instance of finding a career in the Salesforce ecosystem, which is the problem that I was faced with, you get a chance to practice that in the military through tons of different situations, some life and death, others not. And so I found that by using that framework, I was able to achieve my dream job, essentially, of working at Salesforce within a year after retiring from the military. And so, if I take that framework and I kind of break it down, so my problem was I have to essentially break into a completely new industry with no technical background and no network to lean on for guidance, support, or really access to opportunities. I had essentially had deleted my LinkedIn account because it was filled with connections that didn't relate to the IT industry. And so I was starting from scratch. So that was the problem set that I was faced with. There's numerous risks there. So first and foremost is that I don't get hired. I jump into this job and I do not get hired, and then I have to figure out some way to feed my kids. So I needed to have that stable, decent paying role as soon as I left the military. And then obviously, there's another risk where, okay, you get hired, but you rush into a role and you really don't enjoy the work. A lot of veterans face that, and spouses as well, where they perhaps don't do enough planning, or they just don't know what they want to do, and so they take the first job that comes their way, and then they find they don't enjoy it, and so they move around to different industries and different roles before they finally find something that resonates. And I needed to avoid that because my children were younger and I wanted them to have stability. I didn't want to be constantly changing locations or jobs. And so I basically developed a plan to mitigate these risks and find a role on the first try that I was passionate about, and that also met my needs for compensation. And so, as you're aware, I've mentored a lot of folks over the past 3 years. And not only have I created this plan, but I've also shared it with them and then been able to see that it works for them as well. So I know it's reproducible. And so, if I can share it with you, there's really, when it comes to transitioning into any industry, it's not specific to Salesforce, but it applies to Salesforce. You have to have three things to be successful. That's continuous education, it's personal brand, and it's work experience. And so, from a continuous education perspective, in any industry, but especially tech, you always have to be learning. I mean, as you know, Shrey, that the pace of innovation in our industry is extremely rapid.
It's an insane
And
pace,
so,
actually.
yeah, there's 3 releases a year, and that's just with the core platform. Obviously, there's other clouds that release things on top of that, and you've got the App Exchange Marketplace, and so there's all these different facets that you have to be aware of and be up to speed on. And so, for that piece, that's really where Trailhead came in for me. I used it to quickly get up to speed on the technical side. But what I love about Trailhead is that you also can leverage it for soft skills. And so there are numerous badges, numerous modules that focus on the soft skills that you need to be competitive in the employment marketplace. And so that's where I got my continuous education, I guess, piece of the pie, if you will, from. And then the next piece is really work experience. So it's funny because as a lot of veterans and spouses, and really anyone that's transitioning into a new industry knows, no one's going to hire you unless you have work experience. But how do you get work experience
without getting a job
if they're not going to hire you? Yeah, unless you have work experience. So it's this chicken or the egg
exactly
thing.
Yeah,
And it's incredibly frustrating.
it is indeed. I have that question lined up for you. Before moving on to that question, I want to share my bit about how a veteran can be helpful for any organization out there who actually wants to thrive into the ecosystem. And I was just having a conversation with one of my colleagues, and he's working for one of our client who has got a veteran working for them, and he had a meeting like a couple of days back and stuff like that. And what he was saying was that this guy doesn't have any technical skill, what exactly is required in order to execute that project. But this guy is actually leading this project better than anyone ever can, just because of the leadership skills and the soft skills that he has got, because of the experience that he has from the military or from the Navy, like whichever department he is from. I guess he's from Indian military or something like that. I'm not sure about that. But yeah, this is exactly what he was saying. And this is exactly the same thing that you just said, that veterans bring in a lot of different skill sets other than the technical ones, which the companies who are thriving into the Salesforce ecosystem or any other ecosystem need very much. Because what happens with the technical people is they're very good in the technical aspects of thing, into executing the code or writing the code, or like making sure that how the point and click tools are working, how to run test class and stuff like that. But they are not good with people. They are good with computers. But we do need people who are good with people and who know how to lead people, how to motivate people and get things done. And that's a skill set which every company wants. And at any time they want those kind of people. And veterans are the best people who you can get in your organization to play that role. So yeah, I 100% agree with what you just said. And yeah, coming back to all the three things that you just said, I got to know about these 3 steps that you always recommend. I had a conversation with someone who has been a part of, who knows a little bit about you, and he said that there are 3 steps that he suggests. Number 1, you need to know what exactly you're going to be doing into the job. That's the first thing that you need to do. Number 2, you need to build the personal brand. That's exactly what you said. And that is something that you can do with the help of certifications or the Trailhead badges that you're actually mastering in a very short time. Number 3 is getting an experience. So while you were talking about getting the experience without actually getting the experience, I want to ask you one question. How people, this is a very, very, this is a question which I get asked almost every other day onto the Salesforce Hulk channel, on like in the comments or in the email or on LinkedIn, that all the companies want someone who has got an experience into the onto the tool or onto the platform. But how can we get an experience without getting a job? So how can we get that experience? So what is your advice for all of those people who are looking for experience without having a job?
Yeah, so to the question of how do you get work experience without the benefit of previous work experience, and how do you really get started, there's different ways to do that. obviously veterans have some unique resources, which I can go into. But what I'd like to do is really talk about the resources that anybody can access, independent of whether or not they've served. In my case, I began getting work experience through volunteering. And so I went out on LinkedIn, and this is after I had been developing my network for a while, and I created a post, and my post basically said, hey, I am a passionate, aspiring Salesforce professional. I'm interested in volunteering, 20 to 25 hours per week for a nonprofit, and looking for anyone that's interested. And because I had built that network and I had been building my personal brand, within 3 days, I had someone that was interested. I had a veteran-focused nonprofit that said, yeah, our admin is getting ready to leave, and we'd love to investigate whether or not it makes sense to bring you aboard. And so I did a few interviews with folks at the organization, and they brought me on as the solo admin. And that's where I got my first experience. And what I tell folks is that always be leveraging your current experience to generate the next experience. And so, you never know where you're going to work a year from now, 3 years from now. Don't limit yourself. And so while I was, I was volunteering for this veteran-focused nonprofit as their sole admin, and learning a ton, which was fantastic. But I was also looking for that next opportunity where I could keep enhancing my skills, because I was still very new to the ecosystem. And so in my case, I was still looking for additional volunteer opportunities because I had free time on the weekends. I found another veteran-focused nonprofit called Marivis, and they agreed to take me on as a consultant, as a pro bono consultant, because they were increasing the size of their programs, and their current org needed to be revamped to be able to handle this additional capacity. And so I began creating functionality for them on their platform. And so at this point, I was working 40 hours for the Navy. I was working about 20 hours for my first veteran-focused nonprofit. And then I was also working, 5 to 10 hours per week for the second veteran-focused nonprofit. And I did that for a year.
And how did you manage it along with Navy?
So I would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, 7 days a week. And I would spend about 2.5 to 3 hours doing the volunteer work in the various orgs prior to my kids getting up. And then once they got up, I'd get them ready for school. I'd go off to work for 8, 9 hours, and then I would come home. And then when they were in bed, I'd spend maybe an additional hour of more volunteer work. And then I would repeat that on the weekend. Obviously not all weekend, because they wanted to get out and do things. So, but while they were sleeping, I would do 3, 4, 5 hours of work each day, Saturday and Sunday. And so that amounted to, each week I was working between 65 and 75 hours, which, is not sustainable in the long term. And I don't recommend it, but it did enable me to cram in a whole lot of work experience in the span of a year. But, obviously if you're working with nonprofits, in most cases, you're going to be using the Nonprofit Success Pack, or NPSP as it's also known. And that's a different animal than the straight Salesforce core platform. All right. They use the objects for different things. There's different functionalities. It's a different use case with, different, different business requirements. And so I knew that I would need to kind of get some mainstream experience. And so then I began looking for internships. And there's a military program where you can apply for an internship during the last 3 to 6 months of your service contract. And they will release you from your service contract, but still pay you while you do this internship. And so obviously that's not available for folks that are not military. But I would still recommend looking for internships, if you're not military and you want to find a way to get experience. And, the best way to do that is to leverage your personal brand and use social media to connect with companies and develop relationships with them. Develop relationships with the folks that work there, have informational interviews, talk to folks. And then through those informational interviews and conversations, inquire as to whether there's internship opportunities.
So
And there doesn't need to necessarily be a, you know, a formalized internship program. And a lot of times you can help them create that just by expressing interest to do some pro bono work for them in exchange for, you know, being able to get work experience.
so you're really all in, and you did whatever it took to be where you are today. That's really amazing.
I did, and I didn't stop there. And this is I'd like to share one more way to get work experience.
Please.
And so some folks are like, well, that's great, Dave, but I can't find a nonprofit that is willing to take me on, or I've contacted companies and, you know, there's none that are offering internships. Okay, well, you know, that sometimes that is the case. You can always, I call it alternative work experience. And so what you want to do is you want to demonstrate that you have the skills that are necessary to perform well in the role that you're interested in, whether that's an admin, a developer, or consultant. And there's ways to do that on your own free time. And so what I recommend folks do is to build apps. You know, get yourself a free developer org,
Make demos.
which you can just, yeah, you can find those on, you just Google developer org, Salesforce, and then look at your phone and find some of the apps that you're currently using to manage your finances, to manage your workouts, whatever it happens to be, you know, your tasks, and recreate those in Salesforce. So that'll do a couple things for you. One, it will get you acquainted with, you know, the data model, process automation, all the facets of Salesforce. It will make you a very good either developer or declarative developer, whichever you're interested in. But if you're able to share that on social media, either through a YouTube channel, through a blog that you write about, by creating an Experience Cloud site and sharing the link, that is what employers are interested in, because they can take a look at that and they can go, okay, I can see this person knows how to build on the platform. I've seen their apps, you know, and it's basically, it's a living resume that you can socialize with employers to demonstrate that you have the skills they're looking for.
How do you want to differentiate this so why I'm asking this question is, let me give you a context of it. I've suggested the same thing to a lot of people, and what they say is, I do not want to brag about it. I'm not that kind of a person who brags about the things that I can do or the certifications that I've got, or I mean, yeah, whatever. But still they are struggling to get an experience or to get an internship. I mean, what is your advice for them?
So military veterans go through the same thing, because in the military, we're taught to place the team before ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't find many military folks that talk about I. It's always, you know, we or the team, us. And that's just their culture. And so when they transition and they come into the private or public sector and they're looking for jobs, they still have that mentality. And unfortunately, it's to their detriment. You have to be able to communicate the value that you as an individual add to the team, but you have to do it in a way that doesn't come off as bragging. And so you have to be able to humbly do that. And so I've always balanced that with gratitude. And so while I will communicate absolutely the value that I bring to a team, the things that I have done, I'm always also quick to thank folks for their assistance that they provided me along the way, and to also bring the team dynamic into that, and provide, you know, credit where it's due, because obviously none of us gets where we are solely by ourselves. And so you really have to balance that. That would be the recommendation that I would make.
Got it. Okay, now I've got another question for you, and that is, what exactly is Trailhead by military? And I mean, or you can call it as Vetforce. Is it same, right? This is same, Vetforce and Trailhead.
It's different, actually.
Is it? Okay, please explain me.
Yeah, sure. So Vetforce is the employee resource group that is internal to Salesforce. And so all Vetforce members are Salesforce employees.
Okay.
And when you get hired by Salesforce, you can join Vetforce, and it's a community of veterans, spouses, and allies that get together, and we provide support to the military community. You know, we do fundraisers, we give back.
Got it.
And Trailhead Military is both internal and external to Salesforce. Anybody that is a service member, a veteran, or a spouse can join. There are some allied countries that are also able to join. I believe it's the United States, Great Britain, Australia, New Zealand currently. But essentially, what Trailhead Military is it's a program that provides free Salesforce education and training to service members, veterans, and spouses. And all they have to do is sign up for a free profile and complete the related Trailhead modules. So, for example, you have someone that gets out of the military.
Let's say it's John.
And,
So it's John who was serving in the
yeah,
military, and let's say it's the second last year of him leaving the military. Now what
sure.
what John can do now to get into Salesforce with the help of Trailhead by military or Trailhead military.
Yeah, so one of John's friends tells him about Salesforce, and what he'll do is he'll go to Trailhead, and he'll sign in for a free account. And then through talking with John's friend, he finds out about Trailhead Military, and so that's a separate account that he signs in, also free, and those two will sync. And so everything you do in Trailhead is visible in Trailhead Military. And so John will go and log in the Trailhead Military, and he will look at the various certifications they offer. And I think right now there's 17 different certifications they offer. Again, all free. And we'll say he wants to be an admin. And so he'll click on the admin career path, and he will complete the required Trailhead modules. And so there's a trail that Trailhead Military puts out that they require people that are interested in getting that free voucher to complete. So he completes the trail mix, and he's given a free, actually he has a choice. So he can take a certification course, a Salesforce admin certification course. And as you know, Shrey, those are usually, a couple $1,000s a piece. They're not cheap. And so he'll get the option to get a free voucher for that.
For the certification or for the training as well?
For both.
That's really cool. That's for, I guess, $2,000 to $3,000 for 5 days.
Yeah,
that's expensive. Yeah.
And the course is optional. So if he doesn't want to take the course, he can go right to the certification voucher. It's, as you know, he'll get a code in his email, and he just goes into Criterion.
Use that
and he
voucher
plugs
code,
that code
in.
And he gets the free exam. But it doesn't stop there. So, you and I just talked about kind of the three things that I, in my opinion, folks need: continuous education, personal brand, and work experience. Trailhead Military provides all those things for free. So the continuous education piece, like I said, there's 17 certifications that they can get. As you mentioned, I have 14, and every single one of those 14 I use Trailhead Military for. It was absolutely free.
Great.
So you can build your entire career on that education that you get for free from Trailhead Military.
That's really amazing.
And they help you with your personal brand too. So they will sponsor both in-person and virtual networking events, where they connect you with other trailblazers as well as other companies to be able to help build your professional network. And so, and in addition to that, there is a partnership between Vetterati and between Salesforce. And I'll explain what Vetterati is for those folks that may not know. It's a partnership where it pairs military trailblazers with industry professionals for one-to-one focused mentoring sessions for 1 hour virtually.
Okay.
And so what Vetterati is, it's a free website.
Okay.
And it's not just limited to, so if you want to be a mentor, anybody can mentor. Anybody and everybody. To be a mentee, you have to be, a service member, a veteran, or a spouse. And so what John would do, using our
example,
persona, is he'd go to Vetterati, he'd create a free account, and he would link up with, say, you. And you could apply to be a mentor on Vetterati, and he would say, "Hey, Shrey, I'd like to schedule a 1 hour session for next week." You'd approve that, and you'd meet with him virtually on the phone, and have a 1 hour conversation about how to get into the ecosystem. And he can do as many of those, and you can have as many of those as either one of you want to do. So I actually took advantage of that for a year, and I had close to 75 sessions. One-to-one focused mentoring sessions. But that's another aspect of Trailhead Military, is they give you that opportunity to focus and work on your personal brand. And so as you're aware, there's chatter groups in the Trailblazer community, right? Where you can connect with other folks that are like-minded on topics ranging from process automation to really anything in the ecosystem. There's the same thing in Trailhead Military. And there's also focused groups that help to pair Trailhead Military members with volunteer opportunities as well as employment. And so that's another way to personally brand, but it's also a way for them to get work experience. because it connects them with those opportunities. And the final piece is a couple of years ago, Trailhead Military created what's called the Salesforce Military Alliance.
Similar
And
to Talent
since
Alliance.
Salesforce, yeah, and since Salesforce has taken that over, but what it is it provides Trailhead Military members with a guaranteed first round interview at any of several hundred companies, and all they have to do is pass their admin exam. So it's an open door to all these great companies, and an opportunity to get that work experience. And so that's really what Trailhead Military is. It's an immersive community experience of almost 40,000 members that provides them with those three critical pieces that they need to get on their feet and be successful in the ecosystem.
That's really amazing. I mean, I was not aware about it till this level, but yeah, it's really amazing. I mean, all what you have to do is just get into the ecosystem, and from that day on, everyone else is going to take care of you and your career ahead. You all what you have to do is just be curious about it and just keep working hard. I guess that's all what you need.
Yeah. I mean, you do have to do the work. So you got to create those engagements. You have to be active in the community. You've got to do the certification work. But yeah, if you're participating and you're showing up and you're doing your work, it absolutely is a hugely supportive environment that enables you to blaze your trail, essentially.
Got it. That's amazing. Okay, so I also know one more thing. Please correct me if I'm wrong. You were denied for an offer from Salesforce once, but later your personal brand only helped you land a job into Salesforce. And in fact, they reached you out for a job. Is that true?
Yeah, it is true.
That's amazing.
So as I mentioned, I was always interested in working for Salesforce. And so right out of the military, I applied for a couple roles, and I wasn't selected because I believe I didn't have enough experience. And so, I put that dream on the shelf for a while, and I figured, okay, I'm going to go to work for the company that I'd been hired by, which at the time was PulseSource. They're a veteran-friendly employer.
I guess they are like acquired by someone now. PulseSource. PulseSource got acquired, or PulseSource acquired another company?
I hadn't heard.
Okay.
But I worked for them, and essentially, I continued working on those three pieces. So, I was working on the work experience by doing project work, and I got a lot of great experience with them. I was working on my personal brand, and I continued to earn certifications with the help of Trailhead Military. And so about a year into working for PulseSource, a recruiter contacted me from Salesforce and said, "Hey, Dave, would you like to interview for this solution architect role?" And initially, I wasn't going to take the job, actually,
Why?
because I was very happy with PulseSource.
Okay.
They're phenomenal.
Okay.
Yeah, I was happy with PulseSource. They're a phenomenal company, and you're in the military, and the first thing you learn is loyalty. And so I was loyal to that company. But talking with my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, she convinced me to take that opportunity because, as I had mentioned to her numerous times, it's the dream job, and how many opportunities you're going to get. And yes, PulseSource is phenomenal, but she told me to basically follow my own advice and always be leveraging my current experiences to generate the next experience. And so I took her advice, and I agreed to interview, and I actually didn't get the role. So it's funny because I was interviewing for a solution architect role, but I was a very junior solution architect at PulseSource. And so I finished the interview process, and the interviewers were phenomenal, had a great time. And I said, "Hey, listen, Dave, great interview. We can't offer you the position." I said, "Okay, I appreciate it. Thanks very much." And they said, "But, we love the fact that you're passionate about the platform." I had pulled out my dev org, and I'd shown them what I'd been doing. And we'd like to offer you a different role. And so they asked me if I was interested in coming in, a couple steps down as a senior solution consultant. And so I was like, "Yeah, absolutely. I would love to." And so that was the first role that I had with Salesforce. And so when I reached back out to that recruiter and I said, "Hey, I'm curious, I do a lot of mentoring. I've been trying to get a role with Salesforce for a while. And, what is it about my LinkedIn profile?" Because that's where she contacted me through, that convinced you not only to take a look, but to stick around and offer me the opportunity to interview? And she said, well, I took a look at your profile, and it was your profile header. That little strip of words beneath your name that has, whatever it is you're doing
Tagline,
at the
yeah.
time. Yeah, that's what convinced me to stick around. And at the time, I had put in there, I was however many certifications I had put in my number of badges. At the time I was a lightning champion. And so everything I could think to put in there that would communicate value, it was pushed into that one tagline. And that's what she, because as a recruiter, they're very quickly scanning through profiles. They don't stick around for very long unless they're interested. And so in that quick scan, she saw that, cued in on it, and then dove in deeper into my LinkedIn profile and saw that all the things that I was doing and had planned to do. And that's what convinced her to contact me. So that's why, I always stress to people, always be working on your personal brand, because you never ever know when it's going to come full circle and people are going to offer you an opportunity based upon the article you posted yesterday, or the change you made to your profile the day before. You just don't know.
You're very high onto the personal brand compared to the other individuals who are there into the ecosystem, and I really appreciate that. That's really amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, you have to be.
Yeah. So, another question that I've got for you is, how are you trying to give back to the community by volunteering or by some other ways, and how that has impacted you in your personal life as well as your professional life?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, coming into the Salesforce ecosystem, it was challenging. A lot of the programs that I mentioned, even Trailhead Military, didn't exist in its current form a few years ago when I was getting into it. And so it's an extremely stressful situation. I mean, think about the Salesforce ecosystem and all the different paths that you can do. How do you decide on what you want to do when you've never done it before? And within those paths, I mean, consultant. Okay, I want to be a consultant. Okay, well, what kind of consultant do you want to be? What type of firm? What do you want to be, a niche consultant, or do you want to be, core? Like, there's so many choices. And so going through that painful process, a lot of folks reached out to me and helped me. And both military and non-military, both at Salesforce and in the Trailblazer community. And so that was really the community is the reason why I decided to get into it. And that's the reason why I decided to get back. And so I decided early on that when I had enough information, enough knowledge, I felt like I could offer some value, I would start giving back. And so I started doing that fairly early, and it was one-off conversations. And so, I was doing my personal branding. Someone would see my LinkedIn post and they'd say, hey, I'm interested in Salesforce. Do you have time for a 15-minute conversation about what this Trailhead thing is? And so I say, sure. And I'd have phone conversations. I'd do emails. I'd have LinkedIn, messaging. And after about a year of that, I was like, gosh, this is great, but I really want to focus my efforts and be able to reach more people in a more structured way. Because as I mentioned, I'm a process-oriented person. And that's when I found the Vetterati platform, which I mentioned. So I signed up and I began, engaging in 1-hour focused conversations with service members, veterans, and spouses.
And this time you were the mentor, not the mentee.
Right. Yeah. This time I was the mentor. And I was helping them understand how to navigate the ecosystem. And so over the course of that year, I spent probably a couple hundred hours and had 75 or so interactions, some multiple times with the same person, just to help them continue to learn and grow. And so at that point, I was like, this is phenomenal. But I was also kind of burning myself out. A lot of time, a lot of effort, and this is all on top of
job that you had.
working 50 hours a week and managing other aspects, the personal life. And so I needed a way to scale that even better and be able to reach more people with less time. And so about 6 months ago, I decided that I was going to try a different platform. And instead of doing these one-to-one focus sessions, I was going to do one session a week where I would invite as many people as wanted to attend to come talk about, the Salesforce ecosystem and to try to help do a collaborative mentorship engagement. And so I've been doing that now for 26 weeks. I'm getting ready to have my 27th session tomorrow. And what I do is once a week on Wednesdays for an hour, I will, open up a Google Meet and folks will come anywhere from, these days it's usually 30 to 50 people, and they'll show up, and I invite a co-host on, and the co-host is usually from the Salesforce ecosystem, but they don't have to be.
A veteran.
But they talk about different sales. Yeah, well, so they're not necessarily military either. It's really some of them are, but some of them are just allies that really want to help out the the Trailhead military community. And so the way that I choose my co-hosts for that session is I look at what the skills and the paths that people are most interested in. So let's take John, our person. John really wants to be an admin. He has no idea how to get work experience. He's on Trailhead, he's in Trailhead military, but he doesn't know, anybody in the ecosystem. So he comes to my office hours, and I have set that up with a co-host that is actually a Salesforce admin and working in industry. And there's John and there's 25 other people that then get to have this one-to-one engagement session with this admin in what I call a collaborative mentoring format, and ask them questions, questions that, and basically have an informational interview, questions that will help them navigate their future path. And so I've had folks on like David Liu, from Google and from his own website, David Giller, the Salesforce geek. I've had on, veterans. I've had on Stephanie Herrera, who is the creator of Salesforce Saturday. A lot of phenomenal guests come on the show and just share their time and their expertise and their experience to be able to mentor. And I found that really is the platform that I have had the greatest results with, just because I can mentor so many folks
At the same time.
It takes less time. Yeah. And it's just, I think folks get more out of it, because it's not just me mentoring one person and only being able to rely on my experience. I'm not that interesting where I could have, folks come to my sessions every single, so what's interesting though, what's most interesting is they have access not only to the other co-host who changes every week, but they have access to each other. So I'm building this community, and they can all leverage each other for support and have these, these interactions back and forth to be able to really accelerate their learning. And that's really the key, I think.
And they're able to relate with each other more than they're able to relate with you, actually, because you are at a certain level which they might think that they'll not be able to achieve. But while you're working with someone who is at the same level as you are, the journey becomes easier, I guess.
Yeah. There's people they can relate to, exactly, because there's every ability level is represented there.
Got it. And like how this has impacted your personal life. I mean, I got the time. It's the time thing. Any other way it has impacted you in your personal life? Oh
no, absolutely. Yeah, it's obviously from a process perspective, it's much easier process, but no, it's definitely impacted me in other ways. And so, if you think about it, really the best way to learn is to teach. And I'm passionate about continuous education. And so every week I get the opportunity to teach and to benefit from my other co-host who's also there, who's also teaching. And in those focused teaching sessions where we're helping other folks, we are learning too. So the learning, is, I guess, for me as well, as accelerated because I have so many other people participating in that learning process. And it really, additionally, it has taught me about the power of the community. So as mentors, we have the ability to, I guess, to plant seeds for new communities by weaving this web of relationships and personal interactions, which results in creating these new opportunities for our mentees. And so, ultimately, my goal is to inspire my mentees to become mentors, and take that over. And so when this actually happens, when the folks that, I've been mentoring not only achieve their professional goals, but take on their own mentees, not only does it make it all worthwhile, but it reinforces the power of the community and the power of giving back to me. So, from a spiritual standpoint, it's very affirming.
It's a satisfying,
to know
actually.
That,
it's
yeah, absolutely. It is, because it all comes around and it's very karmic.
It is.
If you put good things out into the world, good things will come your way, and this is living proof of that. So I love it.
Got it. Do you face any challenges or any issues while working into the corporate after serving for 20 years into the military? And you can be transparent about it.
Yeah. So one of the things we talk about frequently, because it's a topic of frequent concern, is imposter syndrome. Um, you know, and if your viewers aren't familiar, which they probably are, because I'm sure a lot of them have it as well, it's feeling like you're faking it, and you're really not good enough to be doing what you're doing. It can be debilitating from a self-confidence perspective, to where you may not apply for things, you may not try out for things. And so, challenges that I face, I have imposter syndrome to this day. And I face it in every single meeting that I go into, because so much of what we do in the ecosystem is new, right? In any given, because the pace of innovation is so rapid, we're not always doing, the same thing over and over, and that makes it exciting, but it also makes it challenging and potentially scary. If you're faced with this imposter syndrome, where you're like, gosh, do I have the ability to do this? Can I do this? I'm going to mess up, and I'm going to embarrass myself in front of not only my internal team, but the customers. And so that's a challenge that I face every single day, regardless of how many certifications I have, how many badges I have, how long I've worked in the ecosystem. It's there. And it's not going to go away. And I know that. And so rather than let it get in my way, I've learned to use it to my advantage. And so I use it like a tool. And so if my imposter syndrome alarm is going off, what it tells me is, hey, Dave, maybe you haven't prepared as much as you possibly could for this customer session. Maybe you need to do a little bit more note-taking or research before you go into that discovery session. Maybe your demo isn't as good as you think it is. Let's go take one more look and make sure your script is aligned and all your functionality works, and do one more dry run. And so it's helped me to be even better at my job. I would caveat that slightly by saying, you can go completely in the opposite direction and be a perfectionist, and you don't want to do that, obviously, right? So it's a balance. You have to, to listen to your imposter syndrome drive you to be the best version of yourself, but not take it fully in the other direction, where you're incapacitated because you're always trying to make it better. At some point, you got to stop. It's good enough, and you got to go with it and execute. And so there's a saying out there, a poorly executed plan is much better than a perfect plan that never gets executed. And I would agree with that. You got to execute.
One of the greatest philosophies ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So please elaborate about your current role at Salesforce, and how does your typical day look like?
Yeah. So I mentioned I came on board as a senior solution consultant, which essentially was the same role that I had at PulseSource.
But what do you do at this role?
Name.
Like, I mean, what exactly do you do with in this role?
Yeah. So in the previous role, what that is essentially is you're a consultant, you're meeting with customers, and this is after the sales cycle completes. So they've purchased Salesforce and they want to implement it. And there's a statement of work. So they have a contract, and they've purchased Service Cloud and Sales Clouds, let's say. And we can use our person, John. John's society wants to be a consultant. And so what he get put on a project team at his company, and he will build out that implementation from scratch. And so he'll meet with the customer every single day. They'll write user stories based upon their business requirements to determine what they're supposed to build in the context of that statement of work. And from these user stories, they'll develop this story map, which is this big picture view of everything they're going to build. And once they have all that discovery done, they've built the user stories, they will schedule sprints, per the Agile framework, and they will build a piece of that functionality every sprint, whether that's a 1-week sprint or a 2-week sprint. And so over the course of that project, they will fully build out and test that implementation for that company. And then, on the last day, they go live, and they deliver the product, and, it's all happy stories from there, and the customer uses Salesforce. So that is what I came into the ecosystem doing after I got hired by PulseSource. And that is what I continued doing when I got hired by Salesforce. Like I said, I had different titles.
You're
but
part of the global
same
delivery service team?
Yeah, I was professional service team, customer success group.
Got it.
And so from there, I worked in that role for about 7-8 months. And because of my personal brand, an account exec reached out to me and said, "Hey, Dave, I saw your post on LinkedIn. would you be interested in applying for a solution engineer role? And that's my current role.
Okay.
And I said, sure. I went through the process, confidentially, I didn't know what a solution engineer was at the time. I had to go figure out what that was. But I went through the interview process, and it turns out I love it. And so what that role is essentially is, with my previous job, that's after the sales cycle, after they've purchased Salesforce and you're building it for them. Solution engineers work pre-sales cycle.
Yeah.
So it's before the customer
POCs.
buys Salesforce. Yeah, and it may be before the customer even knows they want to buy Salesforce. So we play a large role in convincing new customers to go with the Salesforce platform, and existing customers to expand their use of the platform. And so what my day-to-day looks like is, I'll meet with the sales team every morning, and additionally throughout the week, to be able to figure out the status of their current deals. And so their business development or sales development reps will go out and collect these leads. They'll mature these leads, and when they're ready, they'll deliver them to the account executive. And the account executive will create this relationship with that prospective customer and talk to them and get them excited about Salesforce. And then when it's time for them to see Salesforce in action, that's when they bring a solution engineer in. And we'll do discovery with that customer. We'll help answer technical questions. And then when it's time to build a demonstration, we will go build a demonstration. Sometimes it's generic and it just shows kind of the overall platform, but sometimes it's very focused on that customer's unique business processes, and we'll give a live demonstration and show how to use it. And so that's typically what I do is give these demonstrations and have these conversations with customers to get them excited about the platform and to convince them that we're the better choice among our competitors, and you should buy us.
That's an amazing job to do, actually. I mean, we at Chintexa also do this job on a day-to-day basis. We're running a consulting company over here with 200 plus people. And some of our pre-sales guys do this job, and they struggle with their work-life balance a lot. And is that the case for you as well? And or what is the definition of work-life balance for you? And are you getting what you're looking for or not?
Yeah, so that's a great question. With my previous role as a solution consultant, there's a different work-life balance equation because you have certain constraints, and so you are accountable to that customer essentially 24/7, because if they have a problem in the latest release of the implementation that you're building, and it's in live, it's in their production instance, and it breaks, you need to be able to fix that right away. And so they've got a hotline to you as the business analyst or as the consultant to be able to fix that. If you're going live, sometimes it's on a weekend, frequently it's on a weekend. And so you have to be okay with having less work-life balance. And there's ways to mitigate that, but it can be challenging. And so in moving to my current role, solution engineer, there's a bit more leeway, but I have 10 meetings tomorrow, and that's just meetings. So I'm in meetings for 7.4 hours. Okay. I know because I looked at my Google, my calendar, my Gmail. Yeah. And I have to build functionality on top of that. So that's just the meetings. I also have to do work on top of that. And so, Salesforce is very big on work-life balance, and they promote it. But as the individual, you have to be willing to take hold of that and achieve it for yourself. They'll give you the tools, but they're not gonna, I guess, schedule your time for you.
They'll give you the freedom to do whichever way you want to do, but at the end, it's going to be your call.
Yeah, they give you the tools, but you got to work it out. And so what I have found really helpful is I'll schedule focus time. It's what I call focus time. And so before the week starts, typically on a Sunday, I'll go into my Google Calendar, which is shared with all of my account executives who are my partners in the various deals. And I will schedule, an hour here, an hour there, where I'm unavailable. And that's sometimes it's time to do administrative activities, like logging my activities. Sometimes it's time to do a dry run for a demo that I have coming up. But sometimes it's time just to go for a walk and to get out of my office and recharge. And so as long as I'm as long as I'm, meeting all their requirements and I'm also giving them a couple gaps in my schedule that they can throw last minute things into, that's perfectly acceptable. And that's a concept that I have used since I started as a solution engineer that has been very effective in helping me build work-life balance. And there are going to be some days where you just kind of have to suck it up, like case in point tomorrow for me, where I have, those 10 meetings. But those are few and far between now that I've implemented this focus time dynamic.
And is it working out well for you?
It is, yeah, it really is. It's busy, but I don't feel like, I'm not able to recharge when I need to. And I wake up every day still excited to do the work that I'm doing because I have that time to be able to step away and do the things that I need to do to recharge, whether it's, sitting in my hammock and reading a book for 20 minutes in the middle of the day, because that's what I need to do, going for a walk, whatever it happens to be. It's going to be unique for anybody, but I would argue whatever that those things are that recharge you, build time into your workday in the middle of the workday if you have to get that. Because if you schedule all your time and you don't apply tools to be able to save this time for yourself, you'll find that you'll get burnout. And it's happened to me in the past, and it's not a good feeling. So there's tools like that you can put into place to help prevent that.
Are you working remotely right now, or like is it hybrid, or you're going to the office continuously?
Yeah, so my role is fully remote. When I started with Salesforce, that was an option, and so I actually got hired right before COVID kicked off in March of 2020, right when it was starting to become a concern. My role has remained remote and will always be remote, which is nice. I live near one of the Salesforce offices, the Boston office, the Boston Tower, but actually don't have to commute for work. So it's nice because I can work from my house, and I can also go on the road when I need to, and work from other states to be able to take advantage of some of that work-life balance and kind of change my scenery.
Got it. That's amazing. And like, are you a big advocate of remote work, or do you think that there are some cons of working remotely, or there are some pros of working remotely, or is it both?
I mean, there's certainly, yeah, I mean, there's certainly pros and cons. I think it all depends on you as a person, and it is an adjustment. So if you're a person that really likes, being in person and having that corporate atmosphere where you've got folks sitting next to you you can turn to and chat with, and there's a lunchroom and all those things, you might find remote work a little lonely. But if you're someone that and I do love all those things, but for me, I like to be able to not have a commute, to be honest. It's the convenience that is great for me. So I don't have to drive into the office and sit in traffic. I don't necessarily have to dress up for work. I'm in a t-shirt right now. It's a Vetforce t-shirt, by the way. And so there's a lot of time savings there. And then when I'm done, with work, I simply, leave my work phone on my desk and I close my office door and I go downstairs and I'm home. But there's challenges too, right? So, and they take some getting used to, and I didn't really discover them until I'd been doing remote work for a while. And that led me to getting burnout. And so if you're a type A personality, like me, and you're a perfectionist like me, it's very easy to basically, because you work from home, not separate your work life from your home life and carry that work through all aspects of your day. And so instead of working 8 hours, you work, 12 to 14, and my work phone's right here. I might as well answer that text, or I might as well answer that email, or I can do one more thing, and you run back to your office. And so you really have to set some firm boundaries with yourself that will say, no, I'm working from, 9 to 5 or whatever your hours are. And when I'm done, that phone or whatever that device is going in the office. I'm closing the door, or, if you don't have a separate work phone, and it's all on your personal phone, you choose not to answer that email. You choose not to answer that Slack notification, and sticking to those rules. Because, if you don't, then like I said, you can overwork yourself. So that's one of the challenges. And so there's on the positive side, there's a huge level of convenience. You can make the office what you want of it because it's your home with no constraints. You have access to your family, and you can go see them, in the middle of the day if you want to. but you have to be able to really have a strict work-life balance rule set in place so that you don't abuse the privilege you've been given by overworking.
Got it. Got it. Okay, so one last question for you. What advice do you have for
Sure.
someone who wants to pursue a career that you are in?
I would say the best thing. So I mean, obviously, I'm gonna default back to those three things that we talked about: continuous education, personal brand, and work experience. But you know, a lot of folks that get into the ecosystem have maybe a little bit of work experience, or and they have some certifications and some badges. I would say devote as much time on your personal brand as you're doing for the other two things. And specifically, it's very hard to know what you want to do when you're first starting out. There's, like I said, there's so many different career paths. The best way to figure it out is to, in building your personal brand and connecting with people, ask them for 15-minute informational interviews to be able to talk about their role. So meet with a consultant and have a 15-minute conversation about what it's like. Meet with an admin, meet with a developer, meet with all these different folks and all these different slices of the Salesforce ecosystem to be able to, in a sense, test drive the career for yourself. And in having those conversations, you'll be able to tell what really resonates with you and what your affinities are. And that will save you time in bouncing around to different roles, different certifications, what have you, and allow you to focus on the thing that you know is going to be best for you. So I would say do that. And then, always be working on your personal brand. So even today, like, obviously I've achieved my dream job, but I still spend a significant amount of my day in social media, posting, creating connections, working on my profile, because you never know when the latest thing you posted or the last change you made to your profile is going to generate an opportunity that you never imagined. And that happened for me with my solution engineer role. I didn't know I wanted to be a solution engineer. I didn't even know what it was, but I love it. And I wouldn't have had it had I, once I'd gotten hired at Salesforce, if I would have said, okay, I'm done. I've achieved the dream job. Now I'm going to stop promoting myself and stop, branding and stop networking. So I just say, keep going, build on your current experiences and leverage that to the next experience.
Got it. Okay, and that wasn't the last question. Actually, I missed out one more question, and that is how we at Salesforce Hulk can help veterans start their career or in their career. What was that one thing that you think that was missing? That if there was something like that, it would have been easier a path for you.
I think, there's, as I mentioned, there weren't as many resources in the Salesforce ecosystem when I was coming in, and now there's a great amount, right? There's Trailhead Military, and there's other resources like Merivis, which is a veteran-focused nonprofit that helps educate veterans and spouses for free on Salesforce. But there's always the need for additional resources and additional mentors. So I would say the best way that Salesforce Hulk or really anyone could be able to provide support to the military trailblazer community is to be an ally. Be an ally and donate your time to support organizations and events that provide support and resources to the community. And so I guess, some examples of that, we talked about one of them. Sign up to be a mentor on Veterati. And you can control your calendar. And if you want to do 1 hour a week or 2 hours a week or 10, it's totally up to you. Another thing you can do is, I mentioned the office hours that I have every week. Those were actually built upon a framework that was started by somebody else. And so I don't know if you know Bill Cooler, but Bill Cooler is one of the co-founders of an App Exchange app, Resource Hero. And he created his own military trailblazer office hours, which is specifically focused on the technical side. And so every Friday at noon p.m. Eastern, he spends an hour to, talk through sticky technical problems that his mentees bring him on the Salesforce platform. And so what I did is I based my whole program on that, and I asked him if he would help me get it set up, and he did. He's very gracious, and he helped me set up my own office hours. And so I would say, as an ally, volunteer to be a co-host or simply attend, spend an hour at either Bill's or my office hours and contribute to the conversation and engage in that, collaborative mentorship opportunity. I've mentioned Merivis a couple times. Merivis, which is spelled Merivis, for folks that may not be familiar with it. has tons of opportunities to be able to give back to the military community and the veteran spouse community by being a mentor. You can volunteer to mentor an admin cohort or a platform app builder cohort, or you can provide coaching experience for resumes. Yeah, and the last thing I was mentioning was, which I think would appeal directly to Salesforce Hulk, is to keep providing support by making video content that helps acclimate new trailblazers to the ecosystem. There's always going to be a need for resources that explain the different career paths and roles, the various certification paths, best practices for studying, how to crush your Salesforce interview, or how to write the best Salesforce resume. All these things are enduring questions that new entrants to the ecosystem have. And so, if you guys and gals can share that on LinkedIn, as well as, perhaps joining veteran-focused LinkedIn groups and spreading your content there, I know it will be much appreciated.
Got it. We'll keep that as a note.
Awesome.
Great. So yeah, that's all what I had for the session today. It was really amazing talking to you, David. Thanks for coming on the show.
Great talking to you too. Thanks so much, Ray.